In the summer of 1917, Atascadero Beach in Morro Bay, California, was a picture-perfect paradise. The sun shone brilliantly in the clear blue sky, casting a warm and inviting glow over the coastline. The sand was soft and powdery, sparkling in the bright sunlight and inviting visitors to stretch out and bask in the glorious warmth. The waves rhythmically crashed against the shore, creating a soothing soundtrack that harmonized with the gentle whispers of the wind. The beach was an idyllic escape where visitors could leave the world's worries behind and immerse themselves in the moment's tranquility. Among the beachgoers was Elisa Rose, a young mother of two. Elisa was enjoying a day of leisure with her family on the beach. With a wide-brimmed straw hat shading her face from the sun, she strolled along the shoreline, relishing the salty breeze that blew through her hair. Her bare feet sunk into the warm sand as she gathered shells of all shapes and sizes, admiring their intricate patterns and textures. At around 9 in the morning, a low rumble caught Elisa's ear, and she swirled her head around towards the ocean. As she looked out, she saw a massive wave emerging in the distance, its dark blue crest towering high in the sky. The sound of the wave, amplified by the stillness of the morning, was like a monstrous beast growling in the distance. Elisa watched as the wave swelled larger and larger, its sheer size and force filling her with awe and terror. The colossal wave seemed to stretch to the heavens, its peak looming above the shoreline like a hulking giant. The closer it got, the more menacing it appeared. Elisa's heart raced as she realized the danger that was approaching. She looked around frantically, trying to locate her family, but they were scattered around the beach, each lost in their own activity. Before she could call out to them, the wave crashed onto the shore with a deafening roar, sweeping Elisa off her feet. As Elisa struggled to keep her head above water, her muscles burning from the effort, she suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed across the ocean. Jack's heart sank as he watched his wife's face twisted in agony, thrashing about in the water. He knew something was terribly wrong. Elisa's screams were a mix of fear, pain, and disbelief as she felt an excruciating searing pain radiating from her stomach. As soon as Elisa looked down, the source of her agony became clear. It was a massive 17-foot great white shark that attacked her. The predator had latched onto her body with a primal intent, its razor-sharp teeth sinking deep into her flesh. Blood spurted from Elisa's wound, coloring the water around her in a deep red hue. Elisa's mind struggled to process the attack as she flailed in the water, trying to break free from the shark's grip. But it was too late. The attack was so sudden and brutal that she didn't even have time to react properly. She looked down and saw the predator's massive serrated teeth clamped onto her body, easily tearing through her skin and muscle. The pain was unbearable, and Elisa's body went into shock. Her life quickly faded away, and she didn't even have the strength to fight back. Her body became limp, and the shark thrashed violently in the water as if trying to tear her apart. As Jack swam frantically towards his wife, the strong currents fought against him, making each stroke more difficult than the last. He was getting closer, but the distance still seemed impossible. As he struggled, his eyes were fixed on the horrifying scene before him. Despite being too far away to help, Jack could still see the gruesome details of the attack. The serrated teeth of the shark had dug deep into Elisa's flesh, causing blood to pour out of her body like a river. He could see the muscles in her stomach being ripped apart and her innards slowly beginning to spill out. The once beautiful body of his beloved wife was now torn and disfigured, her skin ripped and hanging from her bones. As Jack watched helplessly, the shark continued its savage assault. Then, with a sickening crunch, the shark tore Elisa's body in half, devouring the lower part, while leaving the upper half of Elisa's mangled carcass in the water. After the shark had mercilessly tore Elisa's body in half, nothing was left but a sickening scene of carnage, with only the remnants of her dismembered corpse drifting in the water. The once pristine blue water was now tainted with her blood, mixing with the salt and foam of the waves. Jack was still struggling against the currents, his heart pounding in his chest as he witnessed the gory end of his beloved wife. He felt a sense of powerlessness as he watched the shark devour the lower half of her body, leaving only the upper half floating in the water like a gruesome buoy. As the shark retreated to the depths of the sea, Jack finally reached his wife's remains, but the sight was almost too much to bear. Her upper torso was mangled and twisted, her arms splayed out as if reaching for help. The sea had already started to claim her, with her hair and clothes billowing in the current. The tragedy of Elisa's death was only compounded by the gruesome nature of her end. Her family would be haunted by the horrific details of her attack for the rest of their lives. The vivid images of the shark's brutality forever in their memories. The sun had yet to rise, casting a bluish hue over the serene Morro Beach in Oahu, Hawaii. Despite the chilly weather on December 1952, the beach was still brimming with activity as beachgoers reveled in the stunning views of the ocean and the swaying palm trees. Gabe and Tabor were among those who decided to take advantage of the day, gearing up for a fishing trip on the tranquil waters of Hawaii. The two fishermen expertly navigated their way through the calm waters, the rhythmic sound of the waves lulling them into tranquility. They sailed further to sea, heading towards the deeper waters, where they hoped to cast their nets and reel in a bountiful catch. The misty morning air kissed their cheeks, and the salty scent of the sea invigorated their senses, giving them renewed energy to brave the cold. The chilly water of Morro Beach sent shivers down Gabe's spine as he plunged in. He took a deep breath and felt the coldness fill his lungs. He immediately got to work, swimming around the boat to ensure the nets were set properly. With each stroke, he could feel the frigid water envelop him. Meanwhile, Tabor was busy coiling ropes and fixing lines on deck when he noticed a dark figure lurking beneath the surface. His heart leapt into his throat as he realized what it was. He called out to Gabe in a panic, urging him to get out of the water before it was too late. Confused and alarmed, Gabe quickly approached the boat, unaware of what was lurking below. The water around him grew colder and more sinister with each stroke. As he got closer to the boat, he saw a dark shape moving swiftly towards him, its size and speed causing him to freeze in fear. Gabe had already swum 5 feet from the boat when a sudden movement caught his eye. From beneath the tranquil waters, a massive predator rose like a dark shadow, its powerful body slicing through the water like a missile. It was a tiger shark, one of the most feared beasts of the ocean. And this one was a behemoth, measuring a staggering 22 feet in length. Before Gabe could defend himself, the shark had lunged at him with lightning speed, its jaws unhinged to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. With a loud snap, the predator clamped down on Gabe's shoulder, its teeth sinking deep into his flesh and crushing his bones in a powerful grip. The agony coursing through Gabe's body was unbearable, and a primal scream ripped out of his throat as he was pulled under. The shark's ferocity was terrifying, and its serrated teeth tore through Gabe's flesh. Blood bloomed in the water around him, painting the ocean red in a gruesome display of violence. With every shake of its head, the predator inflicted more damage on its helpless prey, determined to tear him limb from limb. The shark's rage was unrelenting, and it thrashed about violently in the water, dragging Gabe's helpless body with it. As the beast twisted and turned, its razor-sharp teeth tore through Gabe's flesh, and the water became a frenzy of foam and churning waves. With a sickening snap, the shark bit off Gabe's arms and shoulders, the force of the attack flinging his lifeless body through the water like a rag doll. The violence of the attack was so sudden and devastating that Gabe's mangled carcass was left floating in the predator's wake, his blood staining it. The water around the boat was a gruesome sight, a mix of froth and red, with pieces of torn flesh floating ominously on the surface. Tabor, one of the witnesses of the attack, was paralyzed with shock and horror, unable to do anything as the vicious predator claimed its victim. Even if he had managed to throw a life buoy, it would have been too late. The initial attack had been instantly fatal, and there was no chance of survival. With the ferocious attack over, the shark retreated into the depths of the sea, its massive jaws now latched onto Gabe's lifeless body. With effortless grace, the predator dragged its prey down into the murky depths, where the darkness swallowed them whole. Still in shock from the brutal attack, Tabor immediately reported the incident to the authorities. Search teams combed the area for days, scouring the waters for any sign of Gabe. But it was a fruitless search. And as time went on, hope began to dwindle. Then, one day, the authorities captured a massive tiger shark in the same area where the attack had occurred. With grim determination, they cut open the predator's stomach, and what spilled out was a horrific sight. The remains of what had once been Gabe were now reduced to a few ragged pieces of flesh, barely recognizable as human. For the witnesses of the attack, the memory of that day would haunt them forever. The emotional trauma of watching a friend and loved one torn apart by a vicious predator was a wound that would never fully heal. Even the ocean, once a source of solace and peace, was now a place of danger and death. A reminder that the natural world was a place of constant struggle and survival. The summer of 1996 was harsh, particularly in the tropical climate of the Philippines. The sun beat down mercilessly on the earth, sapping the land of moisture and life. Yet, despite the unrelenting heat, tourists flocked to the island of El Nido, seeking refuge in its pristine waters and sandy beaches. El Nido, though less developed than some of the other tourist destinations in the country, was a veritable haven for surfers. The waves were a stuff of legends, powerful and relentless, drawing thrill-seekers worldwide. One such adventurer was Steve Poe, a 36-year-old man from the United Kingdom. Steve had come to El Nido to experience the thrill of surfing in a tropical paradise, to test his skills against the powerful waves that rolled in from the horizon. As he stepped onto the beach, Steve felt a sense of exhilaration coursing through his veins. The sand was hot beneath his feet, and the sun beat down relentlessly, but he didn't care. He was here for one thing, and one thing only: to ride the waves of El Nido. The clock struck 11 in the morning, and the sun was beating down with a vengeance on the island of El Nido. Steve had been riding the waves for hours and decided to take a break. He swam towards the shore, feeling the salty water caress his skin. As he swam, Steve was enjoying the coolness of the water, letting it wash away the sweat and fatigue from his body. Suddenly, however, his blissful reprieve was shattered by a searing pain that lanced through his leg. It felt like a vice was clamped around his limb, and he knew something was wrong. Frantic, Steve turned to look at his leg and was horrified at what he saw. An 11-foot bull shark had latched onto his left leg, its teeth slowly tearing through his flesh. Blood mingled with salt water, creating a sickening cloud around him. Steve tried to pull away, but the shark's grip was too strong, and he felt its teeth sink deeper into his flesh. He screamed in agony, the sound carrying out over the water and echoing back to him in a haunting chorus. Steve was in a state of pure panic as he tried kicking at the shark with his free leg, hoping to drive it away. But in desperation, he lost his balance and toppled off his surfboard, tumbling headlong into the water. The shark, sensing his prey was at its mercy, took full advantage of the situation and began thrashing around violently, its teeth gnashing through Steve's flesh with every violent movement. The surging waters around him became a churning maelstrom of fury as the shark attacked with savage ferocity. Steve refused to give up, despite the excruciating pain, desperately trying to fend off the beast tearing him apart. But it was a futile struggle, and with each passing moment, the shark seemed to grow increasingly aggressive, ripping and tearing at Steve's flesh. The shark was determined to drag Steve under, and the force of its tug almost made him lose his grip on his surfboard, which was the only thing keeping him afloat. He clung on for dear life, his teeth gritted in agony as the relentless attack continued unabated. Steve's screams echoed across the water, mingling with the frenzied thrashing of the shark, creating a terrifying and heart-wrenching sound. He felt the sharp teeth ripping through his flesh, each bite tearing away another piece of his body and dragging him closer and closer to the abyss. In the midst of the chaos, Steve refused to give up hope. He summoned all the strength he had left and started to claw and kick at the shark's grainy skin, feeling the strength of his adrenaline surge through his veins. He knew this could be his only chance to survive, but he refused to let go. In a moment of luck, Steve could grab hold of the predator's eyes, and he gouged them with all his might. He knew this was a desperate move, but he had no choice. He had to do whatever it takes to survive the vicious attack. The shark thrashed and mauled at Steve, but he kept on tight and fighting. Through the agony and fear, Steve's determination paid off. After several grueling minutes of struggling, the shark finally retreated in pain, letting go of Steve's mangled limb and disappearing into the water. Steve's body was battered and bloodied, but he was alive. He clung to his surfboard, gasping for air. The salty water stung Steve's open wound as he lay helpless on his surfboard. He knew his survival depended on reaching the shore as quickly as possible. He used all of his strength to hoist himself onto the board and used his arms to paddle towards the beach. Every moment sent agony shooting up his injured leg, but he refused to let the pain distract him from his mission. As Steve approached the shore, a crowd of tourists and locals gathered around him, horrified at the sight of his mangled leg. Steve's leg was a gruesome mess, the flesh torn apart and his bone protruding from his skin. The crowd immediately sprang into action, providing Steve with first aid, trying to ease his pain, and helplessly watching as Steve's life hung in the balance. The ambulance arrived in no time, its blaring sirens piercing through the thick atmosphere of tension and anxiety. The medics quickly assessed Steve's condition and rushed him to the hospital. The doctors and nurses tried their best to save Steve's life at the hospital, but the damage was too severe. They had no choice but to amputate his leg. Steve had lost a part of himself, but was grateful for his life.